Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Esoteric and a continuing series, Model Museum, where I review every single Sega Model 1, 2, and 3 game in a retrospective fashion. That's not an arcade racing game because I did that retrospective last year. And today we're taking a look at LA Machineguns, which is the direct sequel to Gunblade NY on the Sega Model 2. This is one of my favorite light gun games from Sega of all time that is not the House of the Dead, and while Gunblade NY is an amazing game, I just love LA Machineguns, and that's down to the Model 3 visual stylings and art design. Before we get too far involved though, do me a huge favor, go down below, hit like and subscribe and ring that notification bell, definitely helps us out. And if you feel so inclined and want to support the channel, we got a Patreon link down below as well. And there's more than one way you can play this game. You can play it via supermodel emulation on your Windows machine, and it is spectacular with upscaling and 16:9 support. But interestingly enough, Gunblade NY and LA Machineguns did come out for a compilation on the Wii, and they're some of the few games that Sega actually managed to port home in that generation. But let's jump right into the game and talk about what LA Machineguns is and what it isn't. Right off the top, this is a very fast-paced game. This is not Virtua Cop, this is not House of the Dead. Also in theming, but mostly in gameplay style. LA Machineguns moves at a rapid clip the entire game. The action never lets up, and it never gives you a breather whatsoever compared to Virtua Cop and House of the Dead, where they are much slower-paced games. Obviously, if you can't tell already, we are on these basically hover bikes, which are flying through the city, so we're going to get a lot more action and a lot more elevation in LA Machineguns than we would in any other Sega light gun game. This is just an absolute blast to play, especially with a second player. In arcades, this was so intense with the large gun that you would hold in your hand. But honestly, on Windows, whether you use a cylinder gun for IR, it works spectacular as well. Anything that emulates a mouse input is going to work here. But right off the top, Sega just knew how to do action arcade games in pretty much every genre, but LA Machineguns is a very special feeling game. It's almost like if Sega made a Terminator game without a license, because all the enemies you're shooting here are robots underneath their skin. They are not real human beings. Probably to get around one of the ratings in arcades, but it's an interesting concept all the same. And trust me, you don't really get much of a story explanation as to why that is. This game is extremely light on story. What it's not light on, though, is the action. You're constantly seeing something, doing something, and being given something new to shoot at, which in a light gun game is absolutely what you want. And just as this helicopter flies through the city with all the traffic underneath it, the amount of polygons, the amount of action that Model 3 can push on screen at once was second to none in arcades back in the day. There was basically nothing that could hold up to Model 3 hardware-wise in the arcades, and absolutely nothing that could rival it at home until the Dreamcast came out in 1999 in North America. When you saw this cabinet in an arcade, you saw the Sega logo on it, you knew it was going to be something special, and it absolutely was. The other thing I love so much about this game is just how many different levels you go through. Gunblade NY is awesome, but all the levels feel similar. In LA Machineguns, you go from the city, and now we're out into the water shooting scuba divers that jump out of the water with a battleship next to it. Have no idea how they propel themselves out of the water. They're more dolphin than they are robot, but it does work for them. And just all of the sweeping camera pans, all of the fast movement, trying to shoot your enemy while those rockets come at your screen so you don't take damage. It is so much to manage at any one time, but once you really click with the game and start playing it, it is an absolutely amazing experience, and you get so good so quick. You understand how the camera sweeps, you understand what you're trying to shoot at the enemies with. It just 100% works, and you will see that it's not just one bullet per enemy. Some of the variants take like 15 to 20 shots till you finally put them down. And that's a lot of where the fun is in the game. And you'll see here sometimes the camera is going to keep sweeping back and forth. This is when you get the more intense close quarters fights. You have to keep going back and forth. You could totally speedrun this game if you're accurate and you do a good job at taking out all the enemies at once. You're going to have a much quicker time at the end of the level. But that's the great part about LA Machineguns. It's fast-paced, it's action-packed, and it has so much Sega goodness put into it. All of the graphics, all of the colors, all of the action just screams Sega. This is a special game. It feels like it was just something that Sega 100% nailed, including the soundtrack, which unfortunately gets a little bit drowned out by the bullet sound effects, but you're going to get some good music here. This is for like 45 seconds, and I'll come back and tell you more about the history of the franchise and the game that we never got. So it's got an awesome soundtrack, but like pretty much every other Sega arcade game, it loves to prioritize the sound effects volume over the actual music, which I 100% understand. It is an action game, but I do wish you got a little bit of both and more balance. You'll see there I take my first continue. This game can be brutally hard, but let's move on to the next stage, the Las Vegas Strip. And unlike Gunblade New York, I love that LA Machine Guns really takes you across a tour of America. You get to see so many different environments, and seeing Las Vegas here is an absolute blast, including the Excalibur, which I stayed at once for work years ago. 10 out of 10 do not recommend. It is a terrible place, but it had a great arcade that people have mentioned on the channel. So tell me down below where your favorite arcade was back in the day. I would be curious on whether or not you played LA Machine Guns in the arcade. But just getting to another level, the look, the feel, all of the Model 3 colors, there's such a vibe going on with the graphics here. It's so colorful, it's so poppy, it's so vibrant. These games have aged incredibly well in the visual department, and they've aged perfectly as far as the gameplay is concerned. But there was supposed to be a sequel to Gunblade New York and LA Machine Guns. This was supposed to be a trilogy, and not much is known about it except that it was existing at one point in time, apparently on location testing, but that's all that anyone's ever heard of it. That could be just a rumor that's not true. You will see that you saw Sonic Adventure logo on that brick wall, and you're also going to see some other advertisements for other Sega games, which became really popular in Sonic Adventure and Sonic Adventure 2. Sega loved to do that, and right there you'll see that Top Skater ad, as well as Sega World the Arcade, which I don't believe ever was in Las Vegas. But again, just cruising through the Las Vegas Strip in the sky while all of these enemies come at you and these 4 bosses get dropped down by those helicopters, it is so spectacular. They're basically like spiders that are on tracks. There's such a big militaristic theme to this game, except it's so much more futuristic. You have these crab-walking laser pods that are just trying to take you out while you have to manage all 5 of their missiles at the same time. And that's why this game can be brutally difficult if you're doing it as a one-player experience. You have to manage the entire screen by yourself with all those rockets coming at you, or if you're playing a 2-player game, you can just have the left or right hand side of the screen while your friend takes the other. But I absolutely love this one section of the game in the final level, coming through this train corridor here with this train suspended from these tracks as the doors open up and there's enemies with rocket launchers waiting to shoot you. You get a really good look at the Terminator style skeleton underneath them, and right here you just get to see the robots without any of their human skin atop them. It is such a fun vibe, and all of these sweeping camera angles really just go to aid the sense of action in the game. You're always moving, you're always making forward progress, you're always shooting something. You don't even realize how much you've done until the game is over and you realize it's been like a 30-minute front-to-back intense experience. It's so much fun, and that's what I love about Sega in this genre, because as much as I love House of the Dead and Virtua Cop, those games are slower, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's a need for both types of games in the arcade, but when you really just want to shoot a bunch of crap and watch it blow up, LA Machine Guns 100% has you covered. It is just one of those games, you blink and you miss it, but if you keep your eyes open and shoot everything, you're going to have a spectacular time. And I just love the graphical capabilities of the Model 3 as well. This gigantic open area here, you can look down, you can look up when the camera moves, and you see so much in the draw distance. Obviously with the Supermodel emulator, we get it at a higher resolution than it would have been in arcades, but even in the arcade on a CRT monitor, this game just absolutely looked better than pretty much anything else that was on the floor at the time. And I just love the boss fights as well. You have so many different diverse fights, from crabs that have lasers on them, to basically mechs that run along the water, to this what looks basically like a robot gun turret. You're going to see opens up very shortly and has all of these different missile batteries that he can shoot right in your face. You need to take the damage off of him while also managing the projectiles at the same time. Kind of becomes an exercise in what should you shoot at and what could you ignore, which is always awesome, because when you think of a light gun arcade game, you don't think of strategy, but there is a ton involved here. And now that we're on to the final boss fight in the game, the cutscenes work as well. I just wish there was a little bit more story and I knew why I was actually participating in the events of LA Machine Guns, because honestly you don't even realize there's a story. Even if you watch it on replay, you're kind of like, they added it but not really got too much involved. But this level here is probably the biggest action set piece in the entire game, and it's got a spectacular soundtrack that does have more music than gunshots, at least for a bit. So go ahead and listen for one more time, just for 30 seconds, and I'll come back and tell you a little bit more about LA Machine Guns. Okay, well, it's still a lot of machine gun sound effects, but there is some good music underneath it. I'm sure you heard at least a little bit of it. But again, this is just one of those games that I mark as special. I remember the first time I played it at the Dream Machine, my local arcade back in the day, and I've been playing it ever since. And I am looking for an arcade board to add to my collection because XY coordinate games are definitely easier to set up than actual light gun games that need that arcade monitor with all the resolutions. But again, this game just hums. All action-packed from start to finish, never lets up. If you want to play a game for 25 to 30 minutes and feel like you played a game for 6 hours, LA Machine Guns has you covered in a good way. You're not going to want to play a game after this. You're going to be 100% fully satisfied, whether you play alone or with a friend. And if you've never played it before, you 100% owe it to yourself, and you owe it to me to do so after this video is over. But we've killed the final boss. We're onto the credit sequence. Again, if you've never played it, just check it out. This is one of those games. I wish Sega did more stuff like this. I recently played the new Mission Impossible game maybe like 8-10 months ago, and that did have a little bit of a LA Machine Gun vibe to it with the sweeping camera angles, but honestly, as far as the pure action-packed light gun arcade experience is concerned, I don't think Sega ever topped themselves after they released this game. But tell me down below where you would rank it and what you think of it. Short of that, I will be back next week with more of this model museum series. I'll have videos throughout the week as well. It's been so much fun to talk about Sega so far, but trust me, we have a lot more to come. Sega released so many games on their model series of arcade boards. We are just basically halfway through. Short of that, thanks so much for watching. Leave me a comment or question down below, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.